Welcome to my studio. If you've been following my blog, you know that I love making dioramas or miniature scenes, but I've never done a tutorial on how to make one. In this tutorial, I'll show you how to make all kinds of miniatures to fit into a boutique. I'll also show you how to make the structure of the boutique out of a few pieces of foam core. Don't worry if you don't want to make something as large as my example, as this project is full of mini standalone projects that would look lovely on their own or in small groupings. It's up to you as to what you want to do. The images that you see in the boutique are from my 6 new collage sheets. As you can see in the tutorial, the boutique is constructed with a combination of dimensional objects and paper images, and I'm going to show you how to do all that. So let's get started. To make the folding screen, the inspiration was these tags with all this little beautiful fretwork in this. And so I thought, wouldn't that be pretty as a folding screen with this being sandwiched in between chipboard pieces. So what I did is I started by cutting 6 pieces of chipboard. They're all 2 inches by 6 inches, 2 inches wide by 6 inches long. And then I marked out a spot where I'm going to cut out a section, each one of these that the fretwork will show through. I'm only going to use 3 of these to make the screen. So there's 2 pieces for every one. So the fretwork will go in between each piece, and then it'll sandwich in there, and then I will hinge the 3 sections together to make the screen. So the measurements, so that just the fretwork shows, is at the top I measured down 1 inch. And I did that because I'm going to do a curved area at the top. And then on each side I did 1/4 inch. And then that left me enough room in between here to accommodate, it just barely goes over the fretwork. And then I measured down 2 7/8 inches, and that ends up being my cutout. Now to cut it out, I want everything to match, and it's really hard if you cut separate pieces for everything to end up being just precisely the same, especially for the 2 pieces that are going to sandwich together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all these pieces and I'm going to tape them together. Get them all stacked together and tape them. And I'm going to cut through all of the pieces, so they will all be identical. The holes will match up. There'll be no problem. And then I'm going to come in with an X-Acto knife or a big box cutter and my ruler here, and come in and then cut that hole. And to cut, you just go slowly and cut through each layer until you get all the way through. Then once I cut this hole out, the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take this tape off the top, and still keeping all of this stacked together. Then I'm going to take a template, and using a pencil, I'm going to, well, I don't have my pencil with me, but I'm going to mark an arch right here. And that's going to be the point at which I will cut away the corners here so that I end up with an arch. So I'm going to cut this and then come back and show you what it looks like. So here you can see now I've got the stack of chipboard pieces. I've cut out the center, I've cut the arch here, and I've covered it with paper. And everything's stacked in the same order that it was when I cut it. And so I put paper on the front of what's going to be the front of a panel. And then I be sure that when you paper the second piece, that you actually paper this side of the panel so that these things remain exactly in the same position as when you cut them out, because you might have minor differences on the sides and things like that as you cut them. I also decided to make the fronts all the same. You don't have to do that. But I chose the same part of the paper, and it's part of the Junk Gypsy line is the paper that I used. And now I'm ready to sandwich the pieces of filigree, or these little filigree tags, or not filigree tags, these little tags with all the little cutouts. ready to sandwich those in between. And I don't think I'm going to paint them because I think the color of the tag goes well with the browns that are in the paper. So I'm just going to glue all of this together. There's actually 4 tags in that come in the set, but I'm just going to use my favorite 3. So I'm just going to be sandwiching these in, gluing them together. You can see I've already done some inking, and then I'm going to hinge these together and then do some other decorative things to the panels. So now you can see that I have the screen completed. In addition to the stuff that you saw in the last segment, you can see now that I have cut some pieces of chipboard and put some paper on them, and that makes the panels pop. And then on top of that, I have used one of the little brooches in the Bejeweled collage sheet, I think number 2, and then add a little glossy accents to the jewel in the center to give it more design. And at the top, you can see these really super cute coat hooks. And behind them, I've used one of the little knobs on the collage sheet, the boutique collage sheet. Now these little hangers or hooks or whatever are have a little kind of a thing that pokes out in the back, and so when you attach them, you can poke a hole. It doesn't have to go all the way through, just a little indentation in your chipboard, and then that indentation will go inside that, and then that will give you a little bit better support in gluing that in place. The other thing I did was also I added the hinges, and I just glued them into place. Now, if you were going to really be moving this a lot, you might think of running little brads through here to give it a little bit more security, but this will be glued in place in the boutique. And the only thing I want to mention to you is just make sure that you leave this. You see this gap, this space, and you want to leave that so that your each of your panels will bend. So if you get it too close, even though it's a hinge, it's going to be stuck like this, at least in one direction. So do leave yourself, an eighth of an inch or so in this. And so I'm pretty much done with this. The only thing is that a lot of the little accessories, of course, I will be hanging some of them off the screen, and especially on these little hooks. So I have the counter, which is unfinished wood, and so I decided to stain it, and I'm using the Distress Stain, the Vintage Photo, my favorite color. And I've already applied some on the top here so you can see how it looks when it dries. And for the larger surfaces, I'm just using a cotton ball and rubbing in the stain like so. You can see I've got it on a piece of wax paper. It's easier for me to work with it this way, especially when you've got all these little edges and things to use the cotton as opposed to the dauber that comes on here. So I just think this is easier. So I'm going to do that with all the large areas, and then of course you've got all this little stuff inside. So I'm just going to use a Q-tip, and then of course you've got this little areas here where you need to get into these little nooks and crannies. So I'm just going to use a Q-tip to do those kinds of areas. And then the bigger areas, use all the cotton ball to get into those. Of course, if you want a darker stain, then you can just, once this dries, put it on again and it'll get a little bit darker. Now you can see that I have pretty much finished decorating the exterior of the counter. In the little panels, I have stained it, and then I've used paper, and then I've used a couple of images from the collage sheet. You can see them here. So I printed both of these and then one of these twice. And then I put feet on the bottom because I think that looks really cute to have it up on feet. So you can see how nice that stands. And then in the back, what I've done is fold pieces of material, and I've used just little pieces of brocade that I have in my stash, and I just cut them out, ironed the edges, the rough edges, rolled it up the size of the hole, and then put those in there. And then here are the matchboxes. Now it just so happens, fortunately, let me do it this way, I can't get a grip there. it just so happens that the Matchboxes, if you turn them sideways, fit in these holes. So instead of, these are the ones that I used on the Matchbox chest. So instead of this way, if you put them this way, they'll fit in these holes. And I have a drawer front on those. Now, the collage sheets that I have that have the drawer fronts on them fit the fronts of the Matchboxes, both the mini Matchboxes and the diamond ones that you get in the grocery store or whatever your local store is. And so I had to make two special ones just for the size of these. So I will have these for you on the blog to download if you want to use them for the fronts for the drawers. And of course we'll be putting stuff on the top of this. But I just wanted you to see how the cabinet itself looked at this point. The cabinet is made from a easy to assemble kit, a chipboard kit, and you can see I've already started painting it. I've done the first coats of a cream color paint. It's actually called tapioca. So it's kind of a creamy, almost has a little yellow tint to it. And the pieces here, you've got your back piece, you've got your side pieces, and then there's a piece to divide the bottom section. And the bottom section has its own doors. And then you've got all these shelves that go at various heights along here. You can see the cutouts here. And then you've got the windows that you can look through. So what I'm doing is I'm going to go ahead and do the paint treatment on everything because it's so much easier with the pieces separated as opposed to having it all put together. I am going to also add some paper as well, but I'm first going to do the paint on everything and then glue it together and then add the paper. So like I say, I started with the cream. And then what I'm going to do is I have this really dark brown and it's just way too dark. So I ended up just taking the brown and adding some white to it just to back it off a little bit. And what I'm going to do is just take a brush, get some paint on it, take a lot of the paint off, and then just really dry brush down the pieces. And I'm going to do this to all of the pieces. You can see I'm just really getting a really light, so that's a little too dark. I'm just getting a little bit of light streaks of the brown. That's all I want. I don't really want that's too dark. And of course, if you do that like I just did, you can just paint over it and then go over it again. And I'm going to do that to all the pieces. So this is going to be a 3-part paint process where I'm going to dry brush in the brown and then I'm going to be coming in and dry brushing in a teal color on top of that. So I'm going to do that to all these pieces, front and back. And some of these I don't actually need to do because they're going to have some paper on it, but I just find it easier just to do all the pieces and then I don't end up assembling something and finding out, oh, there's something here I should have painted. The other thing, when I painted it, be careful not to get too much paint on these edges so that when you go to fit the pieces together, that you don't have all this paint and then they won't fit together well. So try not to put too much paint on those areas. And then also as I put it together, I can always touch up any little tiny areas that don't have enough paint. So I'm going to dry brush all the brown on this and then come back and then show you the next color I'll be applying. Now you can see that I've dry brushed on a teal color, and the color scheme that I've chosen is to coordinate with the papers that I'm going to use on the cabinet. And there are these two papers. You can see you've got the teal in there, and they're from the Junk Gypsy paper pad. So that's kind of the color scheme I'm going with. Now that I have the base color and the 2 dry brush colors, I'm going to come in here with the sandpaper and just start sanding away some of the paint, maybe around the edges, here in the middle. And I'm just removing it, taking it down to the original chipboard, and it's going to give it a more distressed look. And I'm just going to do it randomly at different places. Pull some off the edges. You can see And I'll just keep working on it until I get some of the paint removed and back down to the raw chipboard. Now you can see after some sanding, I'm down to the color of the chipboard. So I will do that for all the pieces. And then basically I'm done with the paint treatment. The other thing I want to mention is with the dry brushing, just be, if you're going to do this, just be conscious of the color of the, the direction, so that if you're dry brushing the back and the sides, do it all in the same direction. So you can see I've done it up and down like this. Just be sure that you're not going this way. So when I was painting everything, I just kind of had it all laid out direction-wise, so that way I wouldn't like have the dry brush go sideways on the windows and up and down on the back and the sides and things like that. So just be conscious of that. So I'm just going to continue to keep working on all these pieces, sanding bits of it away, and then I'll move on to the next step, which includes assembling and adding the paper and then other decorative elements and hinges and whatnot to put the cabinet together. So you can see on this piece, I think you can see that how I've sanded away bits of the paint to make it look more distressed, and I've done that all over the pieces. And then I have glued together the bottom two shelves and then the centerpiece here. And before I put on the doors at the bottom here and here with hinges, I'm going to do some more work on the inside. And I'm going to come in and add some paper to these sections. I think that goes there. And paper the back. Now I've chosen, this is the from the Junk Gypsy 6x6 pad, and I've chosen one of the more neutral colors so that it won't compete with all the stuff that I put on the shelf, but it'll dress it up, but it won't, you'll still be able to see everything that I have there. And then as you put it together, you know, you may have to sand away a little bit of the paint that's on the pieces that you use to lock this all together with, because the paint, of course, makes everything swell, and the paint adds more bulk. And then, of course, you're going to have little areas like this that don't have paint on them. Now, I'm going to be doing some paper panels on the front and the sides, and that will cover some of that up. But for these kind of areas, I'll come back in with a little bit more paint and just touch those up so that you don't see the chipboard where the pieces are locked together. You can see that on both sides. So I'm going to go ahead and glue some paper in here and do all that touch-up work, and then I'll come back and talk about putting the doors on with hinges. So now you can see that I have added the panels to the bottom and these little pulls. And then I've added these decorative items, the tassels and the little metal. They're like a pull, and the tassel is just like underneath those. And then also I've done the hinges here and up here. And these are the hinges that I'm using. You can see those. And what I did is I first glued them in place, and I'll mention a couple things about them. Some of the hinges weren't exactly at a right angle, so you may have to just push them to make them at a right angle, so that way when you put them on your cabinet, they will fit snugly. And then the other thing is that in addition to gluing, I did put a little screw through there. You can see it's a really tiny little screw, and you can find these at the hardware store. You probably will not find one that is short enough that it won't go all the way through this chipboard and poke out the other side. So there's a trick that I used to prevent that, and that is I just use little jump rings and put them on the screw. And so I think I use 2 is what I use. So you can put as many as you need, and that will make your screw shorter, and it won't go as far in through the chipboard. So it just depends on, you know, how small a screw that you're able to find. And so I glued, then I screwed those in up here and here, and then also, of course, there's a decorative thing here as well, these 3 little metal pieces, and I also did another panel here at the top. So now it is ready for decorating, or actually for putting all the stuff inside of it. So one of the images on the boutique collage sheet is this cabinet frame here. And what I'm doing with that is I mounted it on a piece of chipboard. You can see here on the back. And then I've backed it with some double stick tape. I've got one layer on here. I think I'll probably do 2 layers. And then I have a piece of chipboard, a thicker piece. This was kind of a lightweight. You can see what I mean lightweight. It bends very easily. This one is a heavyweight. It's a little thicker, probably twice as thick or more than that one. Covered it with paper from one of the paper packs. And then that's going to be the background, and this will go on front of it. And with the double stick tape, this will just pop this out from the back just a little bit. And to create the shelves, I'm going to use these little 1x2 glass slides, and this is sized specifically for these slides to work. I thought it would be pretty to have a cabinet that looked like it was all glass. And I'll be gluing these in place, and you can kind of decide how many you want, how many shelves that you want, maybe based on what you think you're going to put on the shelves. And then as a bracket, I'm going to use this foot, the little box foot, that will glue underneath it, and that will keep the glass in place. So I will just do a series of these with the foot underneath it, which will give me the glass shelves. Now this whole thing will be glued to the back of the boutique against the wall. Okay, I have the cabinet put together here. You can see at the top I've added a piece of filigree. Now this is all gold, and so I rubbed it with some burgundy paint just to pop out all the details and to kind of match the burgundy colors in the cabinet. And then you can see I've got all my little feet here. I've got actually 4 shelves. I don't know if the glass is so clear if you can see, but there are 4 shelves here. So I started one by gluing it to the bottom, and because you've popped up the front piece, it does give you a little ledge to glue, with which to glue the glass. And then I have glued each of the feet in place, and then the glass on the feet. I both added glue to the very top of the foot and also to the edge of the glass itself. And I used E6000 for all of this so that it would be very sturdy. And I want to show you something else. And of course, you know, you could do another shelf if you wanted to. You could make these tighter. You can see there's room. This could actually go all the way down to here. So if you wanted to have 5 shelves, you could do that as well. So it's kind of up to you as to how many shelves you want. But if you'll notice, you look at these feet, it looks a little different than the way the foot comes, like this. So what I've done to give you surface area to glue the foot to the wall, or what has become our bracket, is I've just bent these so that bend them until they're flat. And then that gives you a lot of surface area to apply the E6000 and to glue that down nicely. So now it's all ready for me to add all the little bits and bobs that I'll be adding to the shelf. And when I get all those attached, I'll show it to you again. One of the other pieces that I'm going to add to the boutique is a Matchbox chest. You've maybe seen my other tutorial on YouTube. This is the first one I ever did, where I made a chest with 5 and 5. So the only real difference between this one and this one is it's just one stack of 7. So I'm not going to go through cutting and all that, because if you've watched this video, you've seen all that, or if you haven't, it's all there. So I don't want to make this video too long. But the only difference, like I said, is it's a stack, one stack instead of 2, and you can see that I have just covered every surface. I've glued the boxes together and then covered every surface with some chipboard to make it all nice and square and to support the boxes. Then what I'm going to be doing is adding some feet to the bottom, and I have a new collage sheet of drawers fronts that are sized to fit these matchboxes, and these are the These are the, I forget what the brand is, but it's the one that you find in the grocery stores everywhere. It comes in a 10-pack. So these are all sized to fit that kind of matchbox. And I'm probably going to use this one here that I've started cutting out, and those are going to be the fronts of all my boxes. And then I think I'm going to use this rosary bead. Let me move this out of the way so you can see it. This burgundy rosary bead as the handles. I'll be taking this apart and just using small sections of it to make the pulls to pull the drawers out. And then for the papers, I'm using this little pack. It's a 3x4 note cards. There are 15 different designs, 45 sheets. I picked this because it has really tiny patterns, and you're going to see me use that on several things, but it's just got these really, really tiny patterns on the paper, and that'll work really well for things like the box and then the hat boxes that I'll be showing you, and anywhere where I need little tiny patterns on palettes, that sort of thing. I think I'm probably going to use this on the sides of the box. So I'll put it all together and then show you what the final box looks like with it all dressed up with the paper, the feet, and then the drawers with the pulls. I finished the Matchbox chest. You can see I've got the paper on it, and I've inked the edges with Vintage Photo Distress ink. And then I had originally said I was going to use the chain for the pulls, but I changed my mind. I'm going to use that for something else. And instead I've used these little fleur-de-lis charms to attach those on each one. And at the bottom you can see I've added the feet. And I didn't worry about painting that or papering that because you're not going to see that. So that's the first chest. Now there's another version, and I'll leave that right here. It's done with these little thin, narrow matchboxes. And they come in a set of 6 in a box like this. So what I've done is made another stack of boxes. Here you can see I've done 10. And just like with this, I put chipboard around the top, the sides, the bottom, and the back. And of course the bottom I don't need to paper. Papered that, and then I put covers on the drawers. And I have a second drawer collage sheet that is sized to fit these tiny drawers. So there's one for the larger diamond matchboxes, and then there's one for the smaller ones. Now I thought I would also utilize the box they come in, so I took the lid and papered it on all sides, inked everything up, and then my matchbox is going to sit right here like that. And then as a base, I took this wooden candlestick holder, and then I painted it a cream color and then inked it up with a blue and with a green that goes with the colors that's in the paper. And then that will end up being my stand. And then I'll have room over here to put a tall object. So that will be another little matchbox cabinet. To make the ottoman, I'm going to use the lid of a box, some batting. Now, you could use batting like you can buy for quilting or making blankets, whatnot. You could use cotton balls and pull them apart if you wanted to, if you didn't have access to that. And then these are pieces of batting from jewelry boxes, and some of these came from the boxes that the little matchboxes were in. If you remember these, it comes with one of these. So I'm just using those. And you want to glue down layers of this onto the box. And I'm going to use 2 layers so I get a really nice fluffy poof to my cover on my ottoman. And glue all that down so that it just stays in place while you apply the fabric. And then you want to cut a piece of fabric. I've got this beautiful piece of burgundy velvet, and you want to cut it big enough so that once we start to cover this, that we have enough room to pull this over and attach this inside the lid of the box. And you're going to be pulling it very snugly. And of course you can always trim away. Just don't make it too small, and we're just going to be pulling this and attaching this, and then pulling the corners and attaching those to add our fabric. So you can see I've been working on the ottoman, and I've been gluing the fabric to the underside of the box. I spread a lot of E6000 very thickly inside here, and that's what I'm using to attach the fabric. Don't worry about it if it bleeds through the fabric, because you're not going to see this underside. I did want to mention one more thing about when you cut the fabric. We talked about cutting it out so that you had space around, and let's pretend like this is the fabric. One of the things that you're also going to want to do is to cut off the corners, because that way you get rid of some of that bulk. When you get ready to do the corners, you'll see that that'll make it easier if you do that. The order I did was one side, then I used a whole bunch of clips to clip it down, keep it in place while it dried, and then I went and did the opposite side, did the same thing, pulled it tight, pulled it around very tightly, glued it down, and put a bunch of clips there, and then I did this end. And I'll show you, you can see my ends are cut off. What I did is just fold those in like that, tuck and pull it over and glue it in place. And then you end up with these little nice corners on your ottoman. You can see that. Once you've done this, then we'll move on to the next step. To make the chandelier, I'm using a combination of filigree and beads. And each of these pieces of filigree was a different color of gold. And so the first thing I did was paint them all with just black acrylic paint. And that way you get all the dark color in the crevices. And then I came back in with Inca Gold Gilder's paste and then rub that on top of each of the pieces. And then that way now they all coordinate. Now I've used 3 round pieces, but if you wanted a square chandelier, you could use square filigree. But the filigree is nice because it's got all the holes to hang the beads. And the beads I used are these. You can see what's nice about these is they already have an eye pin that's looped, so it's ready to hang, and you don't have to do that. I used 4 different beads on all of these. For the smaller ones, the loop was small enough on the bead that I could just open up. That would be these 2 beads. I could just open that up and put it over the holes in the filigree without having to use a jump ring. Now when I got to the bigger piece of filigree, because the distance between the hole and the edge of the filigree, I had to use a jump ring. So I put a jump ring on and then hung the bead off of that. And you can see here I've used 2 different sizes of beads. And now what I will do is I'm going to go ahead and hang these together like this in a stack. Now you could go from big to small, or you could go from small to big. Either way works fine when you see chandeliers both of those ways. And then what I'm going to use is this beaded rosary chain, which is really pretty. And of course the beads are already on that. And then also I'm going to use just a regular gold chain. So I'm going to cut this in pieces and connect all these, and I'll show you what that looks like. So I want to show you the finished chandelier. Of course I've showed you already how I hung all the beads on the 3 pieces of filigree. And then I'm going to try to hold this sideways and keep it in place. And now you can see I've got that chain, the rosary chain, going from each level of filigree, and there's 4 that go from this one to this one. You can see 4 all the way around, and the same thing here. And then the other thing I did, I don't know if you can see inside there, is for the little holes that were in the center of the filigree, I used a flat back pearl on each one. And then for the top one, I used one of the beads from the rosary. These, you can see it's the same bead as this. And I just put that through the center hole here of the top one, and then that gave me something to hook my center chain on. Now, I haven't cut this yet because I'm just going to leave this until I get the structure of the boutique put together so that I can decide how far this needs to hang from the ceiling. I'll just turn it again just so you get another good look at how it looks. So here I have a little plastic dress form. It comes as a kit, and these two pieces come separate, and you just glue them together. And then it has a base as well. The rod comes separate than the bottom, the foot of it, and I've already glued that together, and then it will fit inside of a little hole here inside the dress form. But I'm going to wait to do that because what I'm going to do to it first, it's probably easier for this not to be in there. And then you can see that I've painted this. Since it's plastic, I used the patina aged bronze paint, which sticks to non-porous surfaces like this. And I also did the top of the dress form right here, the little knob. And now what I'm going to do is decoupage some tissue paper over the bust area of the dress form. And to do that, I stamped tissue paper with a French themed stamp. And I just stamped this several times on the tissue paper to give me the paper to decoupage. Since I figured I needed something thin to be able to work on such a small surface like this, I thought the tissue paper would be a good idea. And then I'm just going to use some Mod Podge and come in and carefully apply the tissue paper. You can see that to the bust area. Of course, you could paint the bust area too, but the color scheme of how I'm going to decorate it, it kind of worked well to just use the color that was already there, and then come over it with the white paper. And it's not that you're going to be able to see a lot of the detail from the stamp. It just kind of it's going to give it some pattern. So I'm just going to continue to do this until I get enough on that I feel comfortable with how it looks. And I'm going to take it all the way up to the edge of the neck here. Now we have the three-dimensional bust. You saw me do the decoupaging of the stamped tissue paper, and I also then added some gold tissue paper to the back. And here it's very simple. I took two pieces of tissue paper and put them together because, you know, on tissue paper one side isn't usually as pretty as the other side. So I put two together so that it would look pretty from both sides, and I just accordion folded it. Then spread it a little bit and glued it to the back. Then I took some tulle, some black tulle, and gathered it together, sewed through the tulle with some black thread just to bunch it up, and then glued that to the back. Then I also added this little velvet ribbon to just kind of dress up the waist, and then also to keep all of this in place. Then I've put on just a little bit of black ribbon here and a little rhinestone around the neck, and then the little Paris sign, which you'll find in the digital image kit for the boutique. Here's another smaller dress form, and just like the larger plastic one, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to decoupage it with the stamped tissue paper. And because it's cream colored, it should look just a little bit different when it's done than the black. And I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm going to leave the bottom like it is. So just the body of the dress form is all I'm going to do. And one of the cute embellishments I'm using is this metal cash register. And it has a drawer that comes out. And it has a lot of detail. So I wanted to show it to you first so that you would see what it looked like before I paint it. But I think what I'm going to do in order to make those details pop and to give it some contrast is I'm going to go ahead and paint this black and then go over it in gold so that the black is in all the little crevices of the cash register, and then the gold highlights will hit the top. And it's kind of nice because this drawer is sort of loose, so you do have room to paint it and create a little bulk and still be able to push it in and out of the cash register. Another little embellishment that I'm creating for the boutique is a mirror on a stand. You can see this little hand mirror, and the scale of it's kind of big for everything else, but I thought, wouldn't it make a great mirror on a stand? And to create the stand, I'm using a piece of filigree that the mirror base will fit into, and then I'll glue that in place, and the bottom will serve as a stand. Now, in order to do this, you need to punch a hole in, or a series of holes in the base of this filigree. Now, these are one of these filigrees that you can bend fairly easily, and if you've got one of these memory keepers punches that are great to punch through just about anything, you can get it in here. If you go in where the slit is, you can get it in here and punch a hole in the center pretty simply. And I have a hole. Then what I can do is, you kind of want to, because the base of this is more of an oval shape than a circle, you want to come in and punch a couple of holes that are overlap the middle hole that you punched, but a little bit to the left and a little bit to the right. So that gives you that more of an oval shape for the base of the mirror to fit inside that. And then once you're done punching, it's very easy to bend this back the way it was. And in fact, I went ahead and bent it back even more than it was, so that it was much more domed than originally, and to give me enough room, because part of this is going to be inside there, and you want enough room so that once you glue it in here, it's not going to go past the bottom of the filigree. And then that'll be just something pretty to set on one of the tables or on the counter. So one of the cute things to put in the boutique is hat boxes, and I've made hat boxes out of a couple of different things. The first is just these stacks of a stack of round wood pieces, and you can see that I've covered them with the paper from the small pack of paper, and then I've used some tape around those, decorative tape, and I'll probably glue them together, but I kind of like to wait until I'm ready to kind of decorate the store and then decide if I want them to all be stacked together or use them apart. And I put a little handle on the top one here, which I think is kind of cute. Then this one here is a little box, which is very cute if you wanted to have something inside this or to use it for some other purpose, a little wood box. And here I have painted this one. I've used some paper, some tape, and then I have used one of the images from the mini Perfume collage sheet. You can see there's all different sizes of labels on here, three different sizes actually, so this thing is loaded. And I've just used one of the larger ones here. It's one of the round ones. I'm not seeing it, but anyway, yeah, it's right here. So I used this one on the top. So I thought these would be pretty to decorate the hat boxes, as well as putting them on perfume bottles. And then the other option is a little paper mache box. And you can see here, I've decorated this one with some of the pretty little paper and then a bow. And then I have this one here, and I'm not going to have this one closed. I'm going to have it open. And here's some more of that stamped tissue paper, which I thought would be very cute to just stick in the box. And I will probably have one of the little hats in there. And then just have this sitting with this open as if somebody was taking it out of the box. So you can see I've been busy making perfume bottles out of all kinds of different materials. Some of the bottles, like these here in the front, are made from things that already look like bottles. And I've simply added labels from the collage sheet, the smallest labels that you see on here. And then these are also bottles already made that way, and I've just painted the tops gold so that they would stand out a little bit more. And then I've got some that are a series of small beads. So all of these are beads that are kind of shaped like a bottle, and then I've added different little bead tops. I've got a couple of different beads here and these. Then I've got a little rondelle on the top of this one. Then I have a bead with this tiny, tiny little glass top on it. Then I've got some larger, kind of jar-looking containers, which I have more labels on. And then, of course, there's this one that's shaped like a bottle. And then we have another really cute little bottle. It comes like this. And then I just took a rondelle and put one of the little labels on it so it would be like a powder box. And then I have some larger beads here with another bead on top as the lid, and then this one again has one of the labels, say maybe it's a large powder box, maybe this is a compact for a purse or something. And then I've combined 2 beads here to make this bottle, and then you can see I've got some larger beads where I've used a rondelle for the base, then the bigger bead, and then a glass bead for the lid. And then this one here, I've taken a crown and turned it upside down for the base. Then I have a bead here and then the little pearl on the top. Same kind of thing here. I've got a bead cap, a bead, and then another little bead on the top. And then you can see here some fat ones, more fat ones. Here I have taken a stick pin and clipped it and stuck it down inside, and it has a different base. And then I've used a bead cap right here with another one of those tiny little glass beads and the fat bead there. And then here I've used a heart, a rondelle, and another stick pin. And then this is a pretty little glass jar that I'll probably put maybe some kind of embossing powder or something inside. But it's this little lovely piece with its own little lid. So you can see there's lots of options between using small bottles and putting labels on them, or just combining all kinds of different beads to create something that looks like a perfume bottle or a powder bottle or some kind of cosmetic bottle. Now I have a package of these little flags with all the little cutouts, the little fretwork here, which I thought was really pretty. And what I'm going to do with these is make them into an umbrella, an umbrella that's closed. And I first painted the paper, the color that I wanted, this burgundy color. And then you want to fold the paper in half, like that. And then you need 4, and you're going to glue them together. And I glued just, you can see this, just the very edges here is all I glued, right here. So then you'll want to glue the edges of these together, and then you'll want to glue these edges together. So when you're done, it's going to look like, once you do all the little edges, it's going to look like an umbrella that is collapsed, but not tied up with like the little strap that comes with it. And then for the handle, I'm going to use a toothpick, which I will paint, and then a little bead at the end, and that will make the umbrella. One of the accessories I thought would be cute for the boutique is a little bird cage. I'm not quite sure yet what I'm going to put in it. I might put a clock or some flowers or something. But what I wanted to do was make it maybe look a little more dimensional, and so I've got a set of bird cages. I think they come 4 or 5 in a set, and I have 2 sets. And then what I'm going to do is make one the front and one the back, and I've cut some chipboard pieces, and I cut them the length of this straight area. So I'll be combining these pieces on each side. You can imagine what I'm going to do here. And then this on the top. And then once I get it put together, I'll measure again and make a piece for the bottom. And I think I'll probably just leave the top open. I don't know that you need to close it, but you always could put a piece of chipboard across here, a very thin piece of chipboard or cardstock or something. So I will put this together and paint it and then let you have another look. With this, I've got this little white ceramic urn, very cute. I'm going to paint it with a combination of the patina paints, and I'm going to use that since this is a non-porous surface and they work really well for anything. You know, they were made for metals, but of course glass, porcelain, anything like that, ceramic, it works nicely. And I'm going to do a flower arrangement. So once I get this painted, I've cut a little piece of styrofoam to fit down inside here. I'll probably put a little glue inside, put that in there, and then I'm going to cover it with this little foliage looking stuff. It comes in a plastic bag, and I'll put that on the top, and then I'm going to use these little tiny rosebuds to create a flower arrangement. Okay, now you can see that I've got my urn painted and I've got the flower decoration in there, and you can see the little green foliage inside the pot. And then what I've done is I've started with a candlestick holder and painted that a cream color, and then used Inca Gold Gilder's Paste and rubbed some gold on. And then I took one of the hat boxes and turned it upside down to make the table. And of course I've covered it with some of the paper from the Junk Gypsy 6x6 pad. And then of course edged it all with some gold Gilder's Paste just to bring it all in. And then I have a little bit of lace for my stash. And then of course the little flower arrangement. So that's my little piece all put together. Here I have used the lid of a hat box for the top of the table here, and then I've used the candlestick holder again at the bottom, painted with the Rouge liquid pearls paint, and then a little silk teal bow. And around the edge of the table is gold sweeper fringe. And then you can see some perfume bottles. And then the hat stand behind that is the one that is made from the chess piece, and then the little wooden foot piece with the angel on it, and then there's the paper tape. And you also have on top a hat made out of a bottle cap, and the brim is covered with paper. And then there is a piece of ribbon around the crown of the hat, and then I've gathered up and glued some tulle to the back. And then here you can see more detail of the bottles. I thought it was really cute to use the heart, the two hearts as a bottle and a stopper, and then you can see the pretty paper from all the papers from the 6x6 paper pack. I'm going to use things from this new sheet, Fabulous Hats and More, and you can see there's lots and lots of hats and purses and gloves and a little perfume bottle, and then a little bust here if you want to use that, and the hats are all sized to fit this. And what I did is I cut some of these out. Well, actually I applied them to some cardstock and then cut them out and then kind of inked the edges to make sure there was no white. And I'll be attaching those to the backs of cabinets and things like that. And you can just see a sampling of those. And then for the purses, I did the same thing. I applied these to cardstock and then cut them out. And then to add the chains, I took two, I first put the chain on the rings and then the jump rings, and then I glued the jump rings to the back of the purse. And I glued the bulk of the ring behind the purse, so you don't need to have much showing. Just a little bit, and you don't care how pretty this is. I use glossy accents, put plenty of glue on. You're never going to see the back. And so you can see I've used a combination. Some of these I've used just a regular chain, and some I've used some of the rosary bead, which I think is really pretty. And then these will be hanging off of different things in the boutique. Now another thing I'm going to do for hats is make them out of bottle caps, and you can just see a variety of bottle caps that I have here. Some taller ones, some shorter ones, and the bottle caps are going to be the crown of the hat. And then for the base of the hat, I'm going to use chipboard, and you can cut out various sizes of chipboard. I have a couple of stencils here that I use. I've got this stencil here, and then I've got an oval stencil. Basically you want to cut these out, and then your little hat, you can see I've done one already, the little crown of your hat will sit on top of that, and that will give you your brim. Now, one of the things you want to do is not only cut a circle for the outside, but you want to make a circle for the inside too. And that is so that after you get the hat made, if you want to put it on a hat stand, and I'll show you a few of those, there'll be a hole so that this will sit down on the hat stand. Otherwise, you just got this solid area. Now, if the hat's not going to sit on a hat stand, then you don't need to do anything about putting a hole in there. And then you'll want to paint this. I think painting them is the easiest because a lot of the lids go at an angle, and so it's hard to get paper around them. You might can get paper on the top, but putting them on the sides is hard. And then of course there's some nice textures on the bottles, which I think is neat. And then of course then you can cover this outside with all kinds of ribbon, and then attach that to your brim, and then add all kinds of things like, oh, you know, feathers and flowers, lace. I'm going to be adding all kinds of things, so I'm going to make up a whole bunch of these and give you some ideas of the things that you could put on your hats. Now in terms of the hat stands, I have a couple here that I've already painted. You can see here, these come just like this, except for the painting, they're wood. And so you can see what I mean by you want to be able to set this on the stand. And then I've kind of made one. This is actually 2 pieces or 3 pieces. This comes as a set, these 2, and then I stuck this one on the top and turned it into kind of a larger hat stand. And then of course you can decorate them. I've got a little angel here. I've used some of that tape, decorative tape around the edges, so you can really make them into whatever you want. And I'll put some of the hats on the hat stands, and then some of the hats will be on the cabinets. So here is what the small Matchbox chest turned out to look like. Of course, you've got all the boxes. I showed you that, and then the box that all the little Matchboxes came in is the base, or at least the lid of it is the base. And then I did 2 faux drawers here of larger drawer fronts, and those are from the larger Matchbox drawer front collage sheet. Then I did a couple of shoes. I have a whole collage sheet that's nothing but shoes, a couple of different sizes of all kinds of pretty shoes. And then I've got one up on I just cut one of the little Matchboxes. I cut it up, and I'm going to show you more about that later. I cut it up, and I used little pieces of it, covered them with paper, and then used it to lift stuff up. Then we've got the dress form here, and a little bow, and I have a purse hanging off the dress form. Then if you look up here, I've got some of the perfume bottles and the little compact. Then I have a little brass hand holding the Sign Couture, and that's on the boutique collage sheet. And then you see the little bust right here, and that's in the digital version set of the boutique sheet. In the digital set, there's all of the images that are on the collage sheet, and then some more. Then we have the stack of hat boxes here, and that completes it. Now, one thing I want to mention to you, I'm going to show you the back. The way I get these little things to stand up, since they're two-dimensional paper, is I put beads behind them. And you can see, hopefully you can see in there, I don't know if you can or not, but there's a tiny little bead behind the heel. And then up here for the bust, there's a bigger bead behind the bust. And that gives me some surface area with which to glue the paper bits in place. Now we have the large Matchbox chest, and you can see that I have one of the drawers open, and I have image of gloves sitting in the drawer, or as if it's coming out of the drawer. Somebody just laid them there, and those come from the Fabulous Hats and More. Same thing with the gloves up here. Then I have this really lovely little, I'm not sure if it's resin, I think maybe bust of Diana, which is really pretty, and I have taken a little bit of Gilder's paste and rubbed on her just to pop out some of the details. And then of course you see a perfume bottle here, and I've got a hat stand with a hat on the top, and I just want to show you something about how I made this hat on the top. You can see it looks like there's ribbon around the brim, and that's exactly what it is. I started by gluing what will be the bottom of the hat underneath, and then I just started wrapping this through. So you can imagine how you would just keep wrapping this around your ribbon, kind of keeping it equally spaced as you do it, and go all the way around, and then end up with a piece that you glue underneath here where the other piece is, and that gives you that pretty brim. And then of course you can decorate your the crown of the hat, and I've used more of this ribbon and also these little, it's like a string of these little pom-poms that I thought was really cute. Paper on here, and of course painted the plastic first. And so that's how I created that little hat. Now you can see the finished glass cabinet. On the top shelf here, I have this lovely little perfume bottle. Now this is a real little perfume bottle. It actually has a lid that screws off, and there's a hole so you could make it into a necklace or something. And then you can put something inside, and I've put some silver micro beads inside. I thought that looked really pretty. Then I have this jardiniere with the lid and in the center, and then of course another little perfume bottle. Then down here I've got a mask that I've decorated, painted it silver, and added some rhinestones, some little colored pearls and feathers. And then down here you see this little, it looks like a tray. I think it looks like a tray. that is like a filigree, but with these little feet. And I've put various perfume bottles on top of that. And then this gorgeous little clock. I don't know if you can get in really close on that clock, but it's just a beautiful little ceramic clock. And I didn't do anything to it, except I came in with some of the, I think it's aged bronze metal patina paint, and did a little bit more gold on the feet and then up at the top, because I thought that made it pop a little bit more. But that's just such a pretty little thing. And then I have one of the paper hats, and from the Fabulous Hats and More sheet. And I think one of the nice things, this kind of serendipity with the way these the shelf, how we use the feet to keep the shelf up, is it gave me places to glue things. So I was able to glue the hat to the little nubby part of this bracket, and then the mask here, I was able to do the same thing and glue it right to the nubby part of that. So that was kind of a bonus in how I put this together, having that so that I could connect all those things. So this is the completed piece. Now here we have the finished screen, and I've decorated with a variety of objects. Here I have a little, it's a brass hanger, and I've just taken some fabric, same kind of fabric you saw me use with the counter, and ironed it together and folded it so that it would hang from the hanger. And in the center here I have a dress form. Now this part of the dress form comes from the dress form collage sheet, so it's just the bottom piece, which I've backed with chipboard. And then I've come in and just folded ribbons in half and glued them to the middle, to the waistline. And I started with this lighter ribbon, this kind of sheer ribbon, then the gold one, and then, oops, and then the kind of wine colored one. And just glued them all on top of each other, and then wrapped around this velvet ribbon. Now the rose here was actually a white rose that I used the metallic paints, I think it was the Victorian gold. I used it to just paint the white rose gold. So a lot of times I do that with flowers. I just use a lot of white flowers, and I either use paints or alcohol inks to change them into whatever color I want. Then of course I used the same paint. I think this was the aged bronze patina paint to paint the hanger, because it's a wood hanger, so it's wood colored, which it looks pretty that way too if you don't want to do that. And then I just used these little swirls at the top to decorate that, and then more of the metallic paints for the hook here to hang this on. And then you can see I've used one of the purses from the Fabulous Hats sheet, and it's hanging on that hook. And then here we have the hat, which I've glued to the corner of the screen. So, you know, with the hooks and the screen, it's just a really nice thing where you can hang all types of things from it. Really, really cute items. Now you see I've taken this really beautiful little garden stand and embellished it and added all kinds of things. At the bottom here you see I've used a couple of perfume bottles. This is a little hand mirror, and I took one of the labels from the miniature perfume label sheet and put that on the back. I thought that was pretty. Then I have some more little bottles up here made with various beads. And then I've got the purses here hanging using the rosary beads. And then I have a little bow and the angel. You saw me use the angel on the round tables. And then I've painted this whole thing, I think it's with ruby liquid pearls. And then I have another hat on a hat stand here with some ribbon and some feathers. And I wanted the feathers to be gold to go with the hat and all. The Inca Gold Gilder's Paste, and I just rubbed it onto the feathers and gave them the gold look. I do a lot of staining or dyeing of feathers with alcohol inks, but with a paint like gold, you know, anything that you use that's not like an alcohol ink or something that's dry, it just makes the feather all gum together. So I've never done this before, so I thought I'd give it a try. And so like I said, I used that Inca Gold and just rubbed it on it, and I really like the results of that. And then you might notice on each of the levels of the stand, this thing is concave, so it's hard to get things to stand up in it. So I just had a couple of little round wooden discs in my stash, and you could use some chipboard, cut some chipboard, anything that you can put in there to make it flat, which I then covered with paper, just so you can give yourself some place to set all your little items. So that is the stand. See, I have everything in place on top of the counter. I've got a piece of lace that just came off of an old handkerchief. You can see I have the mirror on the stand and the cash register, and then the little tray with all the bottles on top of that. Then I'll turn it around and let you see what the back side looks like. Okay, you can see I have the ottoman put together. On the top here, I have the tray. This is just a piece of chipboard and 2 handles. These handles come with prongs on them, which I snipped off because I didn't want to stick them through to hold this on, because then it would put bulk and the tray wouldn't sit flat. So I clipped those off and then used some E6000. Then you can see I have some gloves from the collage sheet, and a little necklace made out of the rosary beads and another bead, and then 3 perfume bottles. And then here is this little pretty little box with red velvet inside. The bottom of the box is actually the wet red velvet, and so then you can put stuff in, and then it fits into this metal frame. And you can see I have a little mirror and a perfume bottle and a little compact powder thing inside that. So what I've also put on here is a little hat made from one of the bottle tops. I've got some ribbon around the side. This was already black, so that worked out nicely. I put a little polka dot ribbon around it, a little tulle bow, a couple of white feathers, and then a little flat back pearl in the middle. And then here you can see this is all finished. I have put the legs on the sides, and then to tuft it, I've put a piece of filigree here in the middle. Now I liked this filigree because it had 4 tiny holes, and that gave me a way to push this and keep it pushed in tight, so that it would make this tufting of the fabric and the batting that we have under here. So what I did first is I just poked a hole through each of these holes. Actually, I did them one at a time while I was holding it to keep it in place. And then I used a head pin where the head is bigger than the hole. And that's why I say this is really nice, because those holes were really tiny. I put that through, and then I'll flip it over here. And you can see I've got a bead. So this comes all the way through. I snipped it off, put the bead on, and I left, about this much. And then used the pliers to make a little twist to keep the bead in place, all while I held it really tight. So you can see that that holds it really nicely. I mean, you can't do this with glue or anything. You just really need something to anchor it in the bottom. And of course you can see how everything is glued, and it's messy, but you don't see that part. You just see the pretty top. So that's the ottoman. I have a couple of just chipboard dress forms. I put some of the paper from the 6x6 pad on the dress forms, painted the part of it green. Then on this one I've used this lace and some silk ribbon and a little rose. On this one I've used I used two sets of these. I did the pattern first with this loop in the center, and then on top of that I put it down again with the 2 loops on the side, and that gave me that design. And then I have a little bit of beading, crystal beading on there, and then I gathered a piece of this lace up and with a needle and thread, and then made this little piece at the top of the neck, and then of course added the rose. And these come in a set of a whole bunch of chipboard pieces. So there's lots of stuff. You can make as many as you want. And these can be layered as well. So these fit on top of here if you want to get really fancy and layer them up. Here you can see the finished chest. On the top I have hats. I've got 2 hats that I made from the bottle caps. Then I have 2 hats from the collage sheet. The hat on the left I made with some gathered ribbon around the brim. And there is a piece of round chipboard underneath there, but it's just small enough that you don't see it really well, but it is support for that ribbon around the bottle cap. And then I took some little rosebuds and twisted their stems together to create the circular part around the crown. And then behind that I've got the teal ribbon. On the other side, again, I've just put some like crepe ribbon around the bottle cap and tied a bow and then glued the bow back in the back to make that look. Then inside you can see I've got all kinds of little bits and bobs, And now let's take a look at what it looks like opened up. You can see I have a little picture frame inside, framing one of the images from the small pack of paper. And then we've got little perfume bottles. And then I took a couple of the narrow matchboxes. One I covered just the size it is, and the other one I cut part of it off and then put some paper around that so it looks like little boxes. Then you've got the beads on the top. And then if you go down to the next section, you've got a hat from the collage sheet and gloves, and then you've got a stack of the wooden hat boxes, and then you can finally see how the cage turned out. I ended up putting some flowers inside of it. Then you go farther down, and then you've got a hat box that's covered with a nice paper on the left, and then a couple more of those hats from the collage sheet. And just like the other images, I put beads behind everything to give me surface to glue those in place so they would stand up. And then now I just have to decide, am I going to leave the doors open or closed, or some open, some closed. So that's the finished chest. Once you get whatever pieces you want made, if you're going to turn these things into a boutique as opposed to just using them as individual standalone projects or something else, you want to build the boutique structure that all the pieces are going to go into. And what I find the easiest to do is to lay out all the pieces exactly the way I want them to go into the boutique and use that layout as my measurement. So for instance, if the sheet of paper represented all the pieces laid out exactly how I want them to be, then I would take the measurements of the outside of that area. So that would tell me what the base is going to be. And we're going to build this out of chipboard, and it's going to be very simple, just a few pieces to do this. The first thing, of course, is we need that base. And what I've done is made a miniature version because obviously from all the different pieces that I made to show you and give you ideas, it's going to be a much bigger boutique, and that would be hard to get it on the camera. Now I will show you everything at the end, but just trying to describe all this as it's being put together, it would be a little bit more difficult, so I thought this might be easier. So you would decide on the size of your base. And like I said, that's probably the space that all of your items take up. And then this is an optional thing. I kind of like the idea of having the base at different levels. And so what I'm going to do on the sample that I'll be showing you is I cut 2 more pieces for the base, but they're shorter than the main piece. And that way I create kind of a stepping up. And I will be able to put some of the pieces down here and then also have pieces up here. So I cut 2 of these. I mean, you could do 1, so it's just 1 step up. But I kind of liked the idea and the look of having a double step up, so I cut actually 2 of these as the step up. Then the next thing you want to do is figure out your back. Now, the other important thing is once you have your stuff laid out, you're going to measure the height of the largest, tallest piece you have. And then, you know, you might want an inch or 2 higher than that. And especially if you're going to put something on the front, which I am, that's going to hang down, it might hide some of the stuff on the top. So you'll want to figure out, how tall do I want my back to be? First of all, your back is going to go behind here all the way to the table surface. And so you want to make sure that you've got enough here, plus your tall items, plus maybe a couple more inches. And then if you're doing the chandelier like I did, you might want to take that in consideration too. Well, how high is that chandelier got to be, and how is it going to hang down? So you want to have room for all of those things. And then you'll want to cut this back piece the width of your base and however high it needs to be to accommodate all the things that I talked about: a chandelier, extra space at the bottom, a little extra space at the top, and make sure your highest item is taken care of. And then the last piece is just the top, which is going to sit up here like this. Now, your top, you have a couple of options. Of course, your top could be the same width as this, as your bottom pieces here, your base. It could be the width of this base. It could be the width of this base. It could go further out here and go beyond where this base is. But you basically need something that is the width of the back and then out as far as you would like the roof to be. Now you're going to need something to support this roof, and what I'm going to use, and you've got options. I'm going to use a piece of balsa wood. This stuff is so easy to cut. I mean, you can cut it with an X-Acto knife and it'll just cut through it like butter. And I'm probably going to place my balsa wood supports about here. And of course those supports, that will be the last thing that you cut, because once you can measure things, but then they end up being just a hair off, and then these do need to be accurate because they are supports. So what I will probably do is put something in here temporarily to support this, and then I will do a final measurement of how far it is from the bottom of the base where I'm going to put it and the inside of the top, so that it really fits nicely and that this is square. The other thing you need to think about is when you cut foam core, I've showed this many times on a lot of the other videos, you want a very, very sharp, I always use a fresh blade in my box cutter, and cut very slowly with a ruler, with a metal ruler, so that the blade doesn't cut into your ruler, very slowly through, and you'll get nice clean cuts if you do that. If for some reason you do get a ragged cut, then just use some sandpaper to sand it up. Now, one of the other things you're going to want to do as you go along is think about the papers that you want to use, because you're going to want to cover on all the surfaces that are going to be seen. You're going to want to cover them with paper. So in the case of this sample here, if you were going to do more than just the base, I do want to cover this section of the base here because you're going to see it. I'm going to want to cover this part of the base because you'll see it. I want to cover the back on both sides. And then I want to cover both sides of the top, this and this. And what I do is I will cover them, and then cover everything that needs to be covered, and then assemble them after everything's covered. Now, the only other thing that you need to be concerned with is your edge here. And for the most part, you're probably just going to have this thin edge, except for anywhere where you've used more than one layer of chipboard, and then you're going to get sections that are a little bit thicker. Now, what I'm going to use for all the thin stuff, just because it makes it so easy, is there is Dresden that happens to be the exact width of the foam core. So if I ink my edges, and then I apply this, it's going to perfectly cover the edge of that chipboard or foam core, and that's going to be really easy. When you glue anything onto foam core on this edge where it's got the foam part, a lot of glues don't like to stick to it. So that's one of those. I know E6000 is really messy, but E6000 will keep it in place. Now, anywhere where it's thicker, like right here where I have this jump up on the edge and on the sides, I'm just going to cut pieces of paper, decorative paper, that coordinate with all the other paper I'm using, and put those in place here. So that's kind of the basic stuff of cutting and the pieces that you'll need. Now, if you want to do one that's the size of mine, if you're planning on, say, I want to do exactly what she did, what exactly were the measurements that she used, my base ended up being 24 inches long by 12.5 inches deep. Then the second sets of bases ended up being 24 inches long, 9.5 inches deep, which is like 3 inches shorter than this. And then I cut 2 of those, obviously, to do the step up. And then my back ended up being 24 inches by 13 inches. And then my top ended up being 24 inches by 9.5. So I stopped, now this one isn't that way, but the one I've already have cut that's going to be the final one, I did stop it here, and I'll have my support up here, I believe, on the top. Let's see. The other things that you might want to consider is, do you want to do anything decorative on your back? Because it's going to be a lot easier to do that before you put your top on. Once you put your top on, then you're trying to get inside here. And so I'm going to do some decorative things on the back, and I'll show you what those are, and making panels and adding things to it. And then I'm also going to do some stuff to the top to frame this out nicely and make it look more like it is a piece of architecture instead of just pieces of foam core glued together. I'm going to use some things from the collage sheet. I'm going to use some lace, and I'm going to create something at the top, and it will be easier to put that on when the top is free and you can, you know, move it around and do what you want with it to glue it in place. So, so that's what you need to do now, is just cut your pieces out, and then we'll move on to the next step. I'll talk a little bit about the materials that I use to cover mine. First is this paper here. It's a parquet floor, and this is actually made from this is made for dollhouses, and it's shiny, and it's a thicker paper. And if you do one as large as mine, you're going to need 2 sheets of this. So you'll just kind of have to figure out if you need 1 sheet or 2 sheets for your project. And then the back wall, I'm using this stripe, which I think is really pretty. I'm doing this combination of the red and the turquoise, and you've seen those colors in all the individual pieces. And then on this side, there's all these great borders. And I'll be using, on the back side, I'll use this, and I'll use this as a border. And then on the ceiling, I'm using this light color because it'll keep the whole thing lighter, so especially with the dark colors on the walls. And then in the front on the base, I'm using this here. It's the double dot. I'm using this side of it for the front. And then I'm going to make some panels out of this red for the back wall, just to break up the stripes and to add that color in that you see everywhere else. So now we're going to look at my back piece as I've got it going so far. I've got the stripe paper on it. I've got the border at the bottom. And then what I'll do is I'll come in with some panels that have the darker color on them. You can see that really pops the color combination. So I'll put that on there as the back panels, and then I'm going to add to the panels, I'm going to add these little pieces of Dresden. Now these were black, like this. This is the back side. And I came in with the Gilder's paste. I came in with the patina first, the greenish color, turquoisey color, and then the Inca Gold on top of that. And then these are the lights from the boutique collage sheet. And I've added glossy accents to the center part there just to make them pop more. And I'll just set this here so you get a sense of size. So this will be sitting somewhere here, because remember, my back edge is going to be covered up a little bit with the base. And so you can imagine this is actually my tallest piece. And then I will have a chandelier hanging here somewhere. So you can see how many, I've probably added another almost 3 inches here to the height above what my tallest piece is. And I thought about putting some stuff on the walls, but I don't think I will more than that, only because with all those pieces, you're probably not going to see it anyway. You're probably only going to see some of the high stuff. And then, of course, when I come in with my ceiling, I'm going to have some stuff hanging in the front of that, like I said earlier, to give it an architectural interest. So you're probably not even going to see this much of the top of the wall. So that's where I'm going with the back. So now you can see the very bottom piece of my base, and I've got a gold paper on that. And then here I'll put on now that double layer of with the parquet floor. So you've got the whole base there, and I don't know if you can see this in the shot here, but I'll give you some, see if you can get any sense of this at all. And then the back will go here. And then of course the last piece is the roof, which will go here. Now I will cover this top. I've already covered this with the cream paper. I will cover this top, and I will also cover the back of this with decorative paper. Now the boutique is put together, and I'd like to go over a few things with you. If you look at the top, you're going to notice that a couple of the pieces that I made, I decided to use to decorate around the sign, the Boutique Exquisite sign, and that sign you will find in the digital image kit. The pediments around the top, those came off of the collage sheet, and I printed 3 of them, and just thought I would, give it architectural interest all the way across, and I just overlapped them and then wrapped the ones on the end around. And then underneath that, you can see I have glued down a really pretty piece of lace, and I thought that also added to the architectural details of the front of the store. So now let's go in and take a look at the chandelier. Now to hang the chandelier, I did basically the same thing as I did when I tufted the ottoman. I cut my chain to the length that I wanted based on how I wanted it to hang, how far down I wanted it to hang. And then I put a jump ring and an eye pin on the end and then poked a hole through the top of the roof. And then on the other side of the roof, I put a bead over that eye pin, and then I crimped it off, or bent it over the bead. And so that's how the chandelier is being held in place. Now let's go look at the back wall. You can see I've got the panels in place. I've got the little sconces on top of the filigree. And then in the middle there, you can see that I added a clock that's mounted on the medallion, the ceiling medallion that's on the collage sheet. And then underneath that is the chair from the collage sheet, and I've added some double stick foam tape to pop that out from the wall. And then moving to the right, you can see that I've got the dress form on the wall, as well as, well, two dress forms on the wall. And I've also popped those out a little bit just to give them a little more dimension. Now you can see there's lots of, all the other pieces are in there, but I want you to notice the front of the store. You can see that on that base, remember where I said, okay, I was going to do a base and then 2 more layers of foam core on top of the bigger base. And you can see how I've utilized that to put some of the items on the outside of the store. And you can think of a lot of stores that do that, where they put some things outside of their store to draw people in. And so I've put a couple of items out there, as well as you can get a look at the supports for the front. So you've got the back wall supporting the roof, and then you've also got the 2, I used balsa wood. You could use that, or any kind of piece of wood that you wanted, just whatever you might have that would support that. And then it's accented with some of the architectural details of from the collage sheet. So that's what it looks like all put together. Of course, you have lots of options. You don't have to build something this big. You can make it a fraction of the size of this, or you could just make a platform and don't worry about a back wall or roof, or just make an individual piece if that's something that you're interested in. If you go on my blog after you're done watching this tutorial, I have lots and lots and lots of detailed pictures of everything that will go along with the video. And I also have made up the supply lists. Pretty much everything I used, except a few things from my stash, are being carried by Alpha Stamps. And I have divided up the supply list, so each little piece that I built has its own supply list. So that way, if you say, I just want to make the cabinet, I've got the supply list for that. Or I just want to make the ottoman, I've got the supply list for that. And that'll make it easier for you to pick and choose what you'd like to do if you're interested in the stuff that I used. I also have the little image of the drawer that's on the back of the counter. I've got that for you as well. And you can also see in detail the new collage, my new collage sheets. And I'll probably have a little other information for you up there. So I hope you enjoyed this and you find it valuable, and that you will go out and try to make some of these little things.